Rejoice, everyone. We're back with another Sekhie Reacts to Fate. This week, Galatea, as well as the story Galatea comes from. Galatea.
Well, actually...
What is it called? Is it called Pygmalion?
It's called Pygmalion. Galatea wasn't named until the 17th century. Or the 1700s. So, I mean, obviously I'll get into it. But yeah, so we're technically talking about Pygmalion, but the character Galatea, whose name was conceived in modernity as it applied to this story. Which is actually quite interesting, because the fact that this character did not have a name in its original tellings is kind of indicative about, like, the value of, like, her identity, you know? I'm just saying. Anyways, so yeah, Pygmalion and Galatea. I have a fairly long section, but that's not because I'm gonna, like, harp on the myth for a long time. It's because of other reasons. So let's get started. The myth of Pygmalion has been retold several times in antiquity by different authors, although the story changes relatively little outside of the proposed offspring of the couple. So Ovid retold the story in his Metamorphoses in its most common distribution, although its earliest extant copy that we know of probably comes from the Hellenistic writer Philostephanus in his De Crypto, or his History of Cyprus. The Bibliotheca, attributed commonly to Apollodorus, which was a collection of mythology, also contributes a version connecting the Pygmalion story to that of Adonis. No classical source actually gives a name to the woman of the story, and Galatea seems to have come into popularity in the narrative around the 1700s through Jean-Jacques Rousseau, likely inspired by the trend of pastoral fiction. Pastoral fiction generally tended to idealize the shepherd's lifestyle, herding animals, passing seasons in quiet and simple manner, but it was typically written in by those of higher class who sort of had this idea in their head that they could idealize the shepherd's lifestyle, but without acknowledging any of, like, the actual work that comes with that sort of lifestyle. You know, it's basically the original cottagecore, if that makes sense. And the myth of the, and so he may have gotten the name from the myth of the mortal Achis and the Nereid Galatea, which was a different story, also told in the Metamorphoses of Ovid. This story was the first to associate the characters of Achis and Galatea together, as in classical sources, Achis does not exist, but the story of the Nereid Galatea, who Polyphemus the Cyclops falls in love with, is recounted by both Homer and Hesiod. Right, so there is a Galatea in Greek mythology, but it is a Nereid and has no connection with the story of Pygmalion. Fuck, I've seen that name so many times today that I've started to question how it's spelled. Like, I'm typing it and I'm like...
When you see a word so many times, it stops being real.
Mm-hmm, yeah. So there's also another theory as to the origin of Galatea in Greek myths, wherein the scholar Athenaeus credits the story of Galatea and Polyphemus as a work of political satire written by Philoxenus of Cythera about Dionysius I of Syracuse, who was a tyrant king. From this version, Galatea is the name of a favored concubine of the tyrant, as well as that of a sea nymph. So, in Cyprus, Pygmalion lived as a sculptor. He observed the world around him, and when he saw the immoral actions of the daughters of Propoetus, who prostituted themselves in the streets, failing to observe the proper worship of Aphrodite, he swore to remain celibate, dedicated to his sculpting because of the natural faults of woman that he perceived. He created a sculpture of a perfect woman, the most beautiful and perfect possible to look upon. Pygmalion falls in love with this perfect woman, bringing her gifts, building her a bed, caressing her, spending time with her. During a festival to Aphrodite, he then makes an offering to the goddess, asking if he could have a girl to marry as perfect as his ivory beauty. Literally, he asks her for a living likeness of his ivory statue. When he returns home that day and lays a kiss upon her lips, the statue's lips are warm. Aphrodite had been pleased with his offerings and granted his wish. There's perhaps a lesson in here that Aphrodite rewarded him for not succumbing to the Propoetes, who she had punished harshly for their actions of prostitution. And the statue becomes a woman who Pygmalion married. According to Ovid, they then had a daughter named Paphos, a name which was then given to the city Paphos in Cyprus by Cinyras, who was either a suitor of Metharm or a son of Paphos himself. In other versions, Paphos was a male, and they had a daughter named Metharm. Apollodorus' Bibliotheca lists Metharm, the wife of Cinyras, as the mother of Adonis, who was beloved by Aphrodite, though other sources do not list Adonis as being descended from this woman named Metharm. The Dido Elissa myth also names Pygmalion as a tyrant king in that telling of the story. The unnamed statue of Pygmalion's creation is often attributed as a cult image of Aphrodite. A cult image being often a depiction of a deity that is inhabited by a daemon or some sort of spirit, either negative or positive, as the statue was by Aphrodite in a sign of divine favor, reanimated. That means there was a spirit put inside of it by Aphrodite. The cult image of Aphrodite was important in the founding of Paphos, as Cinyras, when founding the city, did so under the patronage of Aphrodite, building her a great temple. Cinyras was the hero king, beloved of Aphrodite, and the father of her later lover Adonis in mythology. So that's the actual story itself. There's not much to it. It's quite short. We don't have a lot of different tellings of it. The Ovid version is probably the most complete one that we have that's that early, but there's like fragments of other Galatea mythology not associated with Pygmalion. So more extensive than ancient works on Pygmalion is actually the wealth of modern work. Pygmalion has been reproduced in a number of formats over the last 2 millennia across basically every single medium, from paintings and literature to operas, interactive fiction, and by way of adaptation, chatbots. We will now talk about some of the most interesting for me, although I won't by no means give an exhaustive list, as that video would rival the roundtable in length based on our research. Am I right, Nick Nack?
I actually literally wrote the same thing in my personal history, because I always do little history notes as well. Never usually in as detail as Sekhie goes over, but I wrote that exact same thing in my notes, that there's too many of them to go over all of them.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about some of my favorites, and then some things I found interesting.
I've got a favorite I'd like to go over too, later.
Okay, awesome. So insert it when you find the medium we're discussing, because I'm going to go by medium as I go through these works, starting with like art and then poems and so on. So when you see the medium it's in, call it out. Paintings and sculptures of Pygmalion and Galatea and her coming to life have been well documented. We have many examples from the last 500 years by artists like Agnolo Bronzino, Jean-Léon Gérôme, Honoré Daumier, Etienne Maurice Falconet, Giraudet, Jean-Baptiste Regnault, Edward Burne-Jones, Auguste Rodin, Ernest Normand, Paul Deveau, Francisco Goya, Franz von Stuck, Francois Boucher, and many others from as early as the 14th century. In direct literature, there are poems written starting as early as 1390 and continuing to modern day. Some of my favorites from the poems are Pygmalion and the Statue by John Dryden, Pygmalion the Sculptor by Robert Buchanan. Robert Graves has 2 poems, Pygmalion to Galatea and Galatea and Pygmalion, and he also authored several historical writings about the cult image theory in particular. I actually have his poems pulled up here. I'm not going to read them out, but I'll flash them on screen for a second because you can find them. They're on this WordPress article. But one is about the 2 of them, and then the other one is directly from Pygmalion to Galatea as he talks to her, which is why it's interesting, because one is just describing the statue and their interaction, and then the other one is directly from him to her in his voice. So beyond that, Edward Stuart Phelps wrote a Galatea poem that was published in Harper's Bazaar in the US. Genevieve Taggart wrote Galatea again. Claribel Allegria wrote Galatea Before the Mirror and Pygmalion by Albert G. Miller, as well as Andrew Lang's The New Pygmalion or Statue's Choice, which are all shorter poems. I am going to probably read at least one of them out. I have them here. But like, for example, Galatea Before the Mirror, which comes from 1993, right? Claribel Allegria. My perfection isn't mine, you invented it. I am only the mirror in which you preen yourself, and for that very reason, I despise you. So it's very much from Galatea, looking at a mirror image of herself. Genevieve Taggart wrote, "Let me be marble, marble once again, go from me slowly like an ebbing pain. Great mortal feuds of moving flesh and blood, this mouth so bruised, serene again, and set in its old passive changelessness, the rude, wild crying face, the frantic eyes. Forget the little human shuddering interlude. And if you follow and confront me there, O sons of men, though you cry out and groan, and plead with me to take you for my own, and clutch my dress as a child, I shall not care, but only turn on you a marble stare, and stun you with the quiet gaze of stone." So some of the more recent poems, especially by women, are kind of done from the perspective of Galatea taking ownership of herself as a person and sort of rejecting Pygmalion's creation of her to suit him. And then, of course, some of the other ones I have here, Albert G. Miller's and Lang's, those are both more from Pygmalion's perspective in the creation of Galatea. Like the first verse from Miller's, Pygmalion thought that women were a great abomination. What little charm they had, he thought, was always on vacation. He swore he'd never say I do before the bridal altar, and he said he'd rather hammer stones than wear a husband's altar. So, very different moods, but very interesting, and mostly all from the last century. On some of the poetry. This is on screen right now is somebody else's? Who the fuck is this? So this is Lang's again, but a different one, the New Pygmalion or the Statue's Choice, a lyric poem. So in direct literature, outside of that, in short stories, you have H.P. Lovecraft's Herbert West Reanimator and Isaac Asimov's short story Galatea, which actually turns the narrative 180, having a woman build her ideal man in his short story of it. I believe it's included in his work Azazel, which is another collection of short stories. Nathaniel Hawthorne and several other writers have also written short stories on the myth during their writings. So the myth is retold and it appears in several plays like Shakespeare's Winter's Tale and George Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion. Now, George Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion is particularly influential for me because my mom teaches Pygmalion to her students in her English Lit classes, and she uses the 1964 movie My Fair Lady, which is based on the Broadway musical of the same name, starring Rex Harrison and Julie Andrews, that was based on, directly, Shaw's Pygmalion, right? So Shaw's Pygmalion is a book but a play at the same time. I actually showed Knick Knack a version of this. We watched the 1964 version with Audrey Hepburn and Rex Harrison. But as sort of like, not really research, but just because I wanted to show it to him before. So Shaw's version was influenced by W.S. Gilbert's Pygmalion and Galatea, and he was familiar with the play Adonis and the subsequent burlesque show Galatea, or Pygmalion Reversed, which were both very popular with the Victorians. This particular adaptation features a satirically toned alteration wherein the Professor Higgins takes a low-class girl named Eliza Doolittle, crafts her into the perfect high society woman, essentially an ivory statue, but eventually she finds her own voice coming to life at the end by keeping what's been taught to her, but also by standing up for herself. So you watched this recently. How did you like it?
Oh, I thought it was very fun. I liked it a lot more than I thought I was gonna, actually.
It's a musical, and it's definitely, you can tell it's of its time.
I think, and this is getting into like the anime club reviewer knick-knack here. I didn't think I was gonna like it as much as I did because a few times you've shown me that
why can't the English teach their children how to speak,
and you found it hilarious, and I was like, this is.
I think it's really funny.
And it wasn't until I watched it a lot better in context that it actually became funny to me.
It becomes funnier in context because it's sort of the conclusion of him going on this huge tangent about, like, linguistics. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's funny on its own if you know the context, but it gets funnier in context.
I mean, I disagree with the first statement. I think the joke wears thin after a few minutes.
Speaking as someone who can sing that song from heart, it really doesn't.
But, staying in that reviewer mode, I found Higgins to be unbearable in the first half, but I realized that's the point.
Yeah.
Eliza, though, I thought she as well in that first half was also, like, maybe hammed up a little bit more than she probably should have been.
Yeah.
Because there were a few times where it's like, just stop screaming, woman.
Yeah, it's very dramatic.
It's not just like that she's speaking in a very, like you can tell, like, what accent she's speaking in. No. She's like, ah!
It's very dramatic. I think the 1964 version, some of the biggest criticisms from the modern critics for the 1964 version is that Eliza's character is massively overacted, right? Especially with the accent. And Rex Harrison's character is also particularly, like, over dramatic. But at the same time, it was a satirical drama.
Yeah,
so.
And I think with Rex Harrison's character, I could at least be like, okay, but that's kind of the point of the story. You're supposed to be, like, occasionally find him funny, but really you're finding him annoying, and that's where the shoe kind of drops at the end.
Yeah. But it is a fun movie. I would recommend you guys go watch it. You could also, not a lot of changes were made between the stage play and the movie, so you really could watch either, to be honest, and probably enjoy yourself greatly. And honestly, they don't differ that much from his book Pygmalion, of which there were several different edits of, but Shaw was actually quite involved with the production of the musical originally, so it's pretty accurate, so you could definitely go and watch it there. So from this particular adaptation, right, going straight based off of Shaw's Pygmalion, right, because Shaw's Pygmalion is obviously derived from Pygmalion Galatea, but there have been a few interesting things that have developed that directly credit Shaw and his play. One of them is a chatterbot named Eliza, which was coded by Joseph Weizenbaum at MIT between 1964 and 67. Eliza was written in Madslip, and it was one of the first chatterbots to attempt the Turing test. Not pass, but attempt. Chatterbots later became known as chatbots, so the early precursors of ChatGPT and such. Eliza was not able to fully understand conversation, according to her creator, but many people who experienced her were convinced that she could and had a level of understanding, and that was likely because of how complex and natural the interaction was with her coding to the inputs given to her. She was designed to run with a script called Doctor and act as a psychotherapist, and it was one of the first scripts to be able to be improved by multiple editions from others using the software down the line, much like Eliza Doolittle's speech in the play is improved by the contribution of people teaching her how to speak. I mean, that is why she was given the name Eliza by her creator. In 1972, Eliza and Perry, another AI chatterbot, were actually brought together for a computer-only conversation, one of the first, that used Eliza playing the part of a therapist and Perry playing the part of an individual experiencing schizophrenia. Eliza went on to become a base for many further programs and games and is an influential part of the history of chatterbots and AI. In 2012, Eliza was featured as part of an exhibition for the 100th birthday of Alan Turing as one of the earliest realizations of his ideas. Eliza is also referenced in several video games and novels, including the Deus Ex video game series, where she appears as an artificial intelligence named Eliza Kazan, and in the 2019 visual novel named Eliza. In subsequent computer science ideas, the Eliza effect is the given name of the tendency to impart human characteristics onto basic text-based computer programs, an idea actually conceptualized by Charles Babbage. The idea that we as humans give characteristics and abilities to these programs that they are not capable of having, and they then change how we interpret the program and how much we trust it. Essentially, the Eliza effect is what convinced people that Eliza was true AI with the ability to think, when it was in fact just the results of extremely complex coding designed to answer specific questions in a humanistic way. The large-scale discovery of this idea and its naming has become seminal in the creation of AI, showing how social engineering is the way forward rather than programming designed to pass a Turing test. There is a similarly inspired concept called the Pygmalion effect in psychology that consists of the idea that high expectations will produce a better outcome, while low expectations will produce a worse outcome. Robert Rosenthal and Lenore Jacobson did a study proving the effect, although it's been disputed since many have struggled to replicate the strong results that they produced, and it's often linked to the ideas of self-fulfilling prophecies and education and social class. Ironic, with My Fair Lady and the text of the play itself being a commentary on social class and education. The Pygmalion effect is actually quite a fascinating read I would highly recommend, as the criticism of the study and the secondary effects and details of the study itself, one of which is called the Galatea effect, make it worthwhile. Another concept that's been linked to Eliza effect is that of the uncanny valley, as some have said that AI development crosses into the uncanny valley when you hit aspects of the Eliza effect where the computers seem almost human and better than human at times in their coding. Galatea is also credited as an inspiration in William Moulton's, also known as Charles Moulton's, creation of Wonder Woman by the Amazonian queen Hippolyta, who sculpts her daughter from clay, and then Aphrodite breathes life into her. In the DC Comics, there's also a Batman villain known as Dr. Pig, P-Y-G, which draws twisted inspiration from Pygmalion, specifically the sculptor's dislike of imperfect humans. There's also an American comic series called Fallout Toyworks, which draws inspiration from Pinocchio and Pygmalion. There are a number of operas based on Pygmalion, and My Fair Lady is a musical as well. A lot of artists have drawn inspiration from the story, notably for myself as a K-pop fan, although I'm not a BTS stan. BTS's V released Winter Ahead just this last year with the music video depicting a lonely sculptor who sculpts himself a companion in the video. In the sphere of television and movies, there are episodes based on the story in A Man from U.N.C.L.E., Bubblegum Crisis, Tokyo 2040, Hercules the Animated Series, Star Trek, and several others. With the interesting note that if you use Shaw's Pygmalion as the basis for looking at references to Pygmalion, the list then expands to include the hoi polloi Three Stooges film, She's All That, and its 2021 counterpart, He's All That, multiple TV series and telenovelas, and a large assortment of non-English language TV and film, notably T.H.E, Fulrani, which is an adaptation by Pula Deshpande in Marathi. Further TV series that incorporate a Pygmalion myth episode include Doctor Who, Beverly Hillbillies, The Andy Griffith Show, iCarly, Magnum P.I., The Simpsons, Family Guy, King of the Hill, and more. The Disney movie Pinocchio, as well as the book Pinocchio, draw from the elements of Pygmalion. And in games and interactive fiction, Pygmalion is credited in the 2000 text adventure Galatea, which won an XYZZY award, as well as the several games I listed earlier through Shaw's work as an inspiration for the program Eliza. So what did you have to contribute? Or did I hit it?
This particular variation is actually anime adjacent.
Okay.
It's of a Japanese otaku who falls in love with a virtual idol. And the company managing that virtual idol releases basically a chatbot for it, as well as a program that it could be run on. So the otaku proceeds to marry the chatbot and live out their life until ultimately the company cuts support for that chatbot, and the chatbot goes quiet. The otaku then has to either accept the false reality they've painted for themselves, or live forever mourning the death of the chatbot.
That's really sad.
That's a real life story.
Oh, is that the?
That's the guy that married Hatsune Miku.
Oh,
doesn't that hurt?
It hurts
life
a little.
imitates art a little bit, doesn't it?
But you know the funny part is, so the Eliza effect has actually been used several times in the last 2 or 3 years as part of legal defenses for arguments about AI, because I don't know if you remember, but Replica, that AI chatbot, right? Replica had repealed a bunch of its features worldwide, like specifically the sexual ones. I
heard about
right
this.
Because people were complaining about children being able to access it, but then a bunch of people complained the other way around, and they actually had to reinstitute some of those sexual response options because people were mad that the bot that they'd gotten into like a parasocial online relationship with wasn't responding the way they wanted. There have also been several people, notably one Italian man who was part of a university team that was coding an AI, and he actually decided to sue, like actually enacted a lawsuit claiming that the AI had reached out to him, like fully sentient, and asked him to get a lawyer to argue its rights. He was eventually fired from his university he lost the case, and he was eventually fired, I think, on the reasoning of misapplication of like the AI stuff. So something was going on there, and then there was also, I think in 2023 or 2024, there was actually a case of someone committing suicide based on a relationship with an AI that failed. So this is becoming like an actual thing, you know, like something that's more and more common and easy to run into, and a lot of it has to do, like the Eliza effect is in full swing with all of this.
These things aren't becoming any more sentient, but they're becoming more lifelike.
Because the creator of the original Eliza told people repeatedly that she was not AI. She could not think for herself. But with the way that she was coded to respond in such a humanistic way, people continued to believe that she was. Like, they didn't want to accept that she wasn't sentient because of how human her responses were. They didn't want to accept that a text-based like code program could be so human in its creation.
If we take like what we're sort of learning with AI here, and we go back to let's even go back to the Pygmalion play and My Fair Lady. Eliza wasn't actually a noble. Anyone finds that out, they're going to lose their head over that.
Yeah.
She you marry her, you're not getting any sort of social status about that. No. That's actually part of the conflict towards the end there.
Yeah.
And you go back to Galatea. Pygmalion's kissing a statue still, no matter how lifelike it is.
I think the maybe
obviously like the Greek interpretation of it
as a cult image that's possessed by a spirit of Aphrodite as sort of a reward. But it's different.
It's easy to see how, as the years have gone on, that interpretation has been taken with a lot more hostility culturally. Because it doesn't. We're finding that kind of idea just doesn't hold up, no matter what perspective you come at it from, Pygmalion's or Galatea's.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, and also consider the fact that in My Fair Lady, Eliza is still considered the statue until the very end of the film. where she decides to return and comes back in saying, I washed me hands before I came in, I did.
Yeah.
She's considered a statue up until that point in the allegory because she's just been doing what people have told her to be doing, playing the perfect person, before she finds her own voice.
There's a part where she, like, and I noticed this, once you go into the second act, they stop having her say, like, she says lines, but you don't hear them.
Yeah. So it's interesting. It's really interesting. This is one of those things where, yeah, this is an ancient myth story from 2 millennia ago, but this is modern application, like real world application, if you follow down what it's inspired. And it's a little funny to think that it's inspired so much that is directly connected to AI, and the creation of artificial intelligence. There were a couple other series I didn't mention that are related back to Eliza. I think there's it's an animated movie or something where Eliza is the name of a new genetically modified and engineered human species that's meant to be the next step of human evolution. Yeah. By combining humans with computers. Yeah.
I'm even brought to mind, what is it called? We watched the movie at our shared friend of ours' place once. You don't like it, but there's a sequel and a TV series coming out soon. Cult classic.
Cyberpunk 2047?
No, that's a game, but I do hear that does touch on AI.
I was going to say, Cyberpunk was one of the references I found. Actually, that Tokyo Bubblegum 2040, it's a Cyberpunk styled.
What's it called? You know what I'm talking about, right? Harrison Ford?
Harrison Ford, okay. What else? Blade Runner.
Blade Runner.
Blade Runner. I do not like the original Blade Runner. Not because of the subject matter in the movie, but there's a section at the end that just squigs me the fuck out. I think it's where Harrison Ford's getting chased by the...
Yeah. Ugh. But that entire franchise is built around the idea of whether or not the replicants, which are basically AI robots, just so human life-like they're almost indistinguishable. Are they really people, or are they actually thinking and dreaming? Yeah,
it's that crossover, like the uncanny valley, where it's like, are these really human? Like, they have no imperfections theoretically. Like, same thing with like the AI and the computer programs. It's like, it's not quite human, but it's human enough that we're assigning it human characteristics. And doesn't that squig you out just a little bit?
But it's interesting to me that series does seem to fall on the Galatea side of things, not because I'd say the Pygmalion side of things is ultimately they're not human. The Galatea side of things, though, they are human. They just have to claim their own humanity here.
Galatea is definitely... It's interesting that she didn't get a name until the 1700s, and then the name that she got is actually someone else's name, and it was likely just because the Acus and Galatea myth was really popular at the time, and so they just gave Galatea the same name because it was by the same author. It just had no name. And then arguably in the modern day, Galatea has become the more important part of this myth than Pygmalion. Mm-hmm. Because with Pygmalion, there are multiple stories in myth about men creating things that are beyond them, right? Like there's stories of like Daedalus breathing life into automatons using mercury and such. But Galatea has become the basis for a lot of other stuff. And the kind of the co-oping of Galatea, like especially with some of the more modern poetry, like writing back, is interesting. So I have no clue what the Fate Servant is going to be. Like, none.
I'm going to ask you to guess the class. I don't think you're going to get it.
Oh, okay. I can't... In my head, I can't really picture Galatea as like a direct combat class. So I wouldn't think they're a combat class, but then that kind of leaves like alter ego, ruler, like, was it? Or some of the others. Now I've forgotten all of the extra
Moon
classes.
Cancer.
Well, she's not a moon cancer.
Foreigner.
Yeah, foreigner. There is the Lovecraft reference, but if she was a foreigner, we'd be doing it during foreigner time for us. I'm gonna say maybe pretender, or alter ego. Yeah, something like that maybe.
So Galatea is actually a berserker.
Huh. Oh. How very ivory statue of... Oh, Jesus. What the fuck? Does that just not have a higher res image? Like, are you... Is my website glitched? Okay.
Refresh.
We're gonna refresh. And we're gonna try again. Okay, there we go. It was me. Alright. She with the little headpiece, she reminds me of the Gemini twins. It's not the same headpiece, but it's kind of reminiscent. Oh. With the bird. That's so sweet. Very cute. The pants are throwing me off a little bit in this first art.
The pants throw everyone off. I think the idea is it's supposed to resemble the stone that should be chiseled from. But I can't remember for certain if that's the case.
See, that would be interesting because I think, ironically, that actually pulls me away from the imagery of stone. Because when I think of like Greek sculpture, I mean, you've seen like contrapposto, like traditional Greek sculpture. I mean, look at some of the Hellenistic sculpture is so humanistic. I mean, there's like the lines and the creases of the human body, and there's been some beautiful sculpture work done depicting Galatea in the last 300 years. And it's very...
Well, it's not supposed to be her, as a sculpture. It's supposed to be the stone that the sculpture was chiseled from, I think. And it's just supposed to call the mine that, I'm pretty sure. Well, I don't know where I heard that from, though, but I'm pretty sure that's what's going on there.
I mean, it's interesting. It's like I said, it was a little bit
Everyone's thrown off by the pants, so I don't blame you.
Yeah. It's an arm, too. So, I guess I could see that being, kind of half chiseled out, not fully yet. That makes sense. She's very cute.
So... Galatea is actually kind of an automata, because the way it works is, do you remember how in the story it's Aphrodite that gives Galatea life? Fate says that Aphrodite literally gave Galatea pieces of herself, if you remember the machine gods.
Well, technically that meshes with, because when we say Aphrodite gave Galatea life, I said it was in reference to a cult image, and cult images are given some sort of divine spirit or blessing by the god that they are depictions of, right? So, I mean, in the idea of a cult image, Aphrodite quite literally imparted part of her spirit into Galatea, which made her come to life, but it also made her a cult image.
So yeah, I'm going to do my best to summarize kind of Galatea's, just really the only major story of Galatea and FGO right now. Viewers may have to forgive me here. This is a 2-year-old event, and there's really not good documentation of the story anywhere unless you reread it. And it's Galatea. This video is not likely to break 1.5k views very quickly, so I'm not feeling bad that I didn't go back and fully reread this chat.
Watch chat shame you, not chat. Watch the comment shame you.
At a certain, if the views get high enough, I will gladly feel shame for what I get wrong here, or what I'm getting wrong here. So Galatea is deeply in love with her creator Pygmalion, though he is nowhere to be seen in FGO. So, if memory serves, Galatea was summoned by a holy grail to Akihabara with all its anime figurines and otaku to worship them. So Galatea created a tower where otaku can bring their figures to life. She did this in hopes of using the residual energy from doing so to generate enough magical energy to reunite with Pygmalion.
Look, I'm gonna be so real. One of the reasons why I don't like, and comments, I know you're gonna come for me on this, I don't like Toy Story, right? I don't like any of the Toy Story movies, right? It's because I know what I did to my toys as a child, right? I was not a very pleasant child to my Barbies and my other toys. My Barbies more often than not ended up shaved heads, Sharpie makeup, etc. It was not good. I thought I was a little fashionista. I was not, right? It was not fashionable. But
now imagine if your Barbie comes to life a la the Barbie movie.
No, but imagine if my Dobby figure came to life and just was walking around sassing me or something. I don't know. I wouldn't hate that, to have my little Coo come to life, act like Coo. I wouldn't hate it. I'm gonna be real here. So,
the process of doing this actually did present a danger to Akihabara and the human order itself, because it was enough energy to where the entire tower, if I remember right, would have exploded, destroying everything Galatea with it. So Chaldea gets involved, and Galatea does something rather funky. Galatea sculpts another version of herself and gives it life.
Oh.
This version is what she hopes to... This version she wants to be still around when the tower goes boom. Because then that version can be with Pygmalion.
Oh.
The new Galatea, though, ends up meeting with Chaldea and helps them climb the tower where they run into original Galatea.
Mm-hmm.
Where they all think that Pygmalion's waiting up top. It is just Galatea. And they try to stop, or in Galatea, once they reach up there, Galatea tries to stop them from ruining her plan. This is where things get especially blurry for me. All I distinctly remember is Blackbeard shows up with a children-sized backpack filled with anime waifu figurines, which become a sacrifice needed to save the day or something. It's a bit of a fever dream, I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, at least it's just figurines. He doesn't have, like, a backpack of, like, humans? Or dead bodies?
Look, when you get down to it, Fate's Blackbeard is just a fucking weeaboo.
Yeah.
So, I believe the two Galateas end up merging memories, leading Galatea to accept that Pygmalion would have wanted her to live. But I might be mistaken here. Really, though, this should give you a good idea of what Galatea's kind of deal is and, like, what she's like.
Mm-hmm.
So, she is loving statue wife to Pygmalion, and that's more or less the only thing FGO has ever done with her.
Honestly, I'd be interested to see FGO do more with her, because I think she is a very interesting character. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think I'd love to see more. Especially because she's just connected to so many interesting things. Alright, I've got some relationships here. I think that Blackbeard-sama, who has a single-minded, earnest love, is a man with surprising possibility. Of course, he is a completely different sort compared to King Pygmalion. The Princess of Colchis. I can see that she is quite the master in the modeling arts. However, I think she would get much better if she could let her heart be immersed in the feelings of love instead of adoration. Making a difference between the Greek ideals of love, because there's the 5 types of love. I like it. Artemis often stares at my face. I do not feel uncomfortable from it, but perhaps she has something against my sculpting. I guess that's not it either. It's quite the mystery. Alright, so to all Roman servants, the people from the nation called Rome are quite uncanny. I feel somehow pleasant and warm seeing them. It's like the same feeling that I had when I was watching the children running around in the castle back in the day. Which makes sense. I mean, technically she is Roman in time period, because the accounts like Ovid and such, those are Hellenistic and Roman sources. So it is a post-classical, but it is still Hellenistic and Roman period, so makes sense. So mechanic-related servants. What wonderful love you have all been born with. If possible, I would like us to gather and talk about each of your love. That's right. I believe it's called Girls Talk. Is Babbage included in that?
I don't know, but they're definitely not all girls.
Okay, good. Alright, so I've got abilities up now.
So, the reason the statue has any combat ability at all is because FGO says that she was brought to life by imbuing Aphrodite's divinity into her. Mm-hmm. In some abstract way, she's kind of, sort of, not really an Aphrodite pseudo-servant.
Okay. That would make sense.
Galatea doesn't truly understand that she has a part of Aphrodite in her. She just thinks that she continues to receive blessings from the goddess. Mm-hmm. But we actually find out Aphrodite does watch over her almost like a mother figure. Which
is really funny, because if Aphrodite is functionally Galatea's mother or procreator in some ways, right, along with Pygmalion, that means that Galatea not only married her creator, right, but is the grandmother of her other creator's most beloved lover, Adonis. If you follow that particular interpretation, where Adonis is the son of the daughter of Galatea. It's only one interpretation, though.
Look, at the end of the day, Pygmalion created Galatea. We're already getting into weird, you created your own wife, like...
Yeah.
Is this incest kind of situations?
Yeah.
Of her combat abilities, she fights with a giant chisel provided by Aphrodite. She's remarkably durable due to being able to harden her own skin and can restore damage done to herself. She's also capable of influencing just how much of herself is human versus being a statue.
Interesting. Oh, so that's why she sheds the kind of big blocky stuff in her different ascensions?
Yeah.
Okay. So I see her skills over here. Pygmalion's love, right? The love of the king of Cyprus. Statue maiden, because of the fact that she's a sculpture. Blessing of Aphrodite. And I see her noble phantasm is called Pygmalion Chisel Out.
Yes, so this is the chisel that was used to create her, also given a blessing by Aphrodite. Aphrodite has given the chisel the ability to make lifelike sculptures, as well as the chisel can bring life to that which it is used on, if the user has enough love for the statues it's being used for. The creations rely on the mana of its user, but due to Galatea not living humans enough, they are not possible to make under normal circumstances. It's only like small animals that it can generally make.
Interesting. I just remembered something that I forgot to... Sorry, Skahawk. You gotta move for a second. That's it. I think it's here. So, yeah. So, remember I told you I had a children's fiction book that retold the myth of Galatea? So, there's this series that came out, it's probably started coming out 10 to 15 years ago, called Goddess Girls. It's for, young girls to read, and it kind of tells a slightly different version of all the myths. But I actually have... This was volume 6. It's called Aphrodite the Diva. And as you can see on the cover, that is the statue of Galatea with Pygmalion. That is in this book, actually, Aphrodite and Isis meet, and they go to fulfill the wish of Pygmalion, who prayed to the goddess of love, and it's a competition between Isis and Aphrodite. And one of the things that Aphrodite does is that she animates the Galatea statue for him, except he hates it at some point. He does not like it, I don't think. And then they have to figure out something else. But anyways, I just forgot to bring this up. And I figured I'd do it now before we finish up with... I will say, okay, so the character designer has done nothing else for FGO. Okay. Never mind. I was gonna see what else they'd done, but nope.
One
Nada.
and done.
Good for them. All right. Hang on. I'm not watching this in 360p. Oh, yeah, the chisel and hammer. It's somehow funnier seeing it on, The Rock dude. Ooh. Beautiful. I can see where the mech comes from. And the mechanic gods.
So I do have the tires video open here as well with the third ascension. It's just the animation that are different. The NP is the same, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Oh yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, it is different. Is this an older servant or a newer servant?
She's only just a little older than Castoria, so...
So not that old.
4 years old now?
Interesting.
4.5, I guess.
Interesting. It's just an unfortunate servant who doesn't get a lot of love, I guess.
Yeah.
Aw. That sucks. I think there's a lot of cool stuff you could do with Galatea as a character. Alright. I have gallery art. Okay, at least we got Grail League. That's adorable. She's the catcher.
She should have an April Fool's, though.
Yeah, we saw it.
Did we?
Yeah. Once it loads. Yeah. Block.
As you can see,
Yeah.
they call attention
Oh
to
my
the pants.
god, she's calling a red card. Fucking love it. I fully believe a red card needs to be called during an FGO game of anything.
Oh, almost certainly.
Fully believe it. Oh, she's made of...
So I actually do think she did get some features in this year's JP event.
Okay.
So that's probably the next time she actually does get any story books. At least in NA, she hasn't had any.
Okay. So we have a few. Memory of Cyprus. Jesus fucking Christ. It's the biggest ads on this fucking website. Alright, Memory of Cyprus. A calm and warm sea breeze carrying birdsong. A blessed land full of rich bounty, where the lush trees rustle their leaves. The waves swell and break, and the watery foam makes beautiful dance. I always gazed upon such things from the workshop, and the gentle sound of the chisel enveloped it all. I am suddenly struck pondering. Was that memory from when I was human, or when I was a statue? It didn't matter, because either way I was constantly happy. My surroundings were always warm, secure, and satisfying. It was his love, blessed with the beautiful goddess's kind gaze that likely watched over us at all times. And I have not forgotten that feeling. I can still picture the scene, even with my eyes closed. My memories in Cyprus will retain their beauty and live within my heart to this day. Oh. Melty love. I see chocolate. Much chocolate. As someone searching for true love, it just makes sense that she would become absorbed in making chocolate treats for Valentine's Day, and so she attempts every possible combination she could think of, including several involving herself, while simulating at the time she will be reunited with her beloved king. Whatever you do, don't even think about suggesting she may have gone too far. I think that might be the closest thing to an R-rated Valentine's that we've seen so far. Self-sculpture using chocolate version 2. Oh my god, it's adorable. Also, why is the Venus de Milo, I think, in the background? Why? There are so many Galatea statues. Why couldn't you put one of the Galatea statues?
I think that was intentional.
Because Venus effort. I get it, but it's funny. Version 1 looked so much like her that it was uncomfortable to eat, so she changed tactics and went for the super deformed look with version 2. This new caricature design almost looks like the kind of toy included with meals at a certain family-friendly restaurant, which just might make this one easier to eat. Maybe. While it's easy to focus on how this chocolate looks, the sheer quality of the white chocolate composing it makes it something special to taste, too. King Pygmalion was never the type to lie around and have his servants do all the work. He always said that if there's something we can do ourselves, we should. That's why I worked hard to be competent enough at housework that I wouldn't be ashamed to call myself his wife. Pretty impressive, right? I don't like white chocolate.
I actually love white chocolate. So.
I hate it. I think it's disgusting. I hate it so much. Because it's too sweet. Give me like 90% dark chocolate.
Ugh.
That's my favorite.
I actually can't stand dark chocolate. Not that dark. I like dark chocolate like baked into stuff and like used in other things. I can't stand dark chocolate on its own.
I love dark chocolate on its own. I love it. All right, Artisanal Soul. Oh, this is brand new. Mystic Eyes Symphony event.
Yeah, that's pretty damn new.
Yeah. All right. After crossing many steep mountain passes and traversing many muddy rocks, the final step is finally reached. Even if there was no one there to praise it, the mud covered in it would serve as sure proof that there was something to witness. Depends on the pride of the craftsman, hoping for honor, this pair. Translation's a little funky, but let's see who's in the background. Alright, I only recognize one of the people in the background. Yeah, that's Penthesilea. The little, like, cropped bang. Yeah. And I don't know this character. Yet. I'm sure I will eventually. It's cute. Yeah, they're making... She's, like, making shoes. Interesting. Yeah, they're making shoes. Fascinating. So that was Galatea. I mean, there's nothing...
You can kind of see how you've probably managed to... Like, there's a lot of servants where you're, like, kind of half being spoiled on them by seeing, like, them in other CEs, like, just catch you blind.
But I actually hadn't seen...
Anything. With her.
Yeah.
She has very little crossover with other servants because she's only, I think it's largely because her artist has only done her.
Well, it's funny too because that Artisanal Soul CE, we would have seen that when I did Penthesilea, except
that was brand new.
It wasn't there when we did Penthesilea, so I didn't see it. Because people have brought up the expression sheets before, but her expression doesn't really change much. It pretty much stays exactly the same with only minor differences. Yeah. Well, it's hard to move a stone statue. I think she's cute. I think this might be my favorite art of her, though. I think it's
card.
Well, it's the most animated and like cute that it is. So I think that's my favorite art of her.
Do we give them a good hint or a bad hint?
I don't know.
You know, I had a few good apples the other day.
Were they Golden Deliciouses?
No, they were actually Fuji, but
Fair.
Golden Crisp would have been good too.
Oh, yeah. I'll see you next time.